I remember the first time another man's hands traveled across my body while my husband's ring still shined on my finger. It was in the back seat of his car, the windows fogged from our breath, and my heart beating so hard that I swore the entire neighborhood could hear it. His lips pressed against mine with a hunger I had not felt in years, and instead of pushing him away, I pulled him closer. In that moment, everything that I thought I was as a wife shattered. I was no longer the loyal woman I promised to be at the altar. I was someone else, someone addicted to danger, someone drunk on passion that was not supposed to be mine. Before I go deeper, I want to take a second to thank all of you. To everyone who has subscribed to this channel, you are the reason I am able to keep sharing stories that cut this deep. To the new and returning viewers who have not yet subscribed, I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button, because it serves as the fuel and energy that powers this channel forward. Do not forget to drop your thoughts in the comments right after this hook, because your voices matter in shaping the stories I bring to you. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Emily. I am a 35-year-old woman, born and raised in the suburbs of Ohio. I married my husband, Mark, when I was 26. He was dependable, kind, the sort of man every woman said they wanted but rarely appreciated. We bought a cozy home on a quiet street, filled it with the kind of love that looked picture-perfect on social media, and lived a life that outsiders admired. To the world, I was blessed. To myself, I was restless. Mark worked long hours as a financial advisor, and his commitment to building a secure future for us was unquestionable. But the more he poured himself into stability, the more I craved instability. The more I wanted fire. He gave me safety, but I wanted sparks. I wanted to feel desired, pursued, consumed. The man who first awakened that hunger was Ryan. He was everything my husband was not. A personal trainer at the local gym, he had that careless confidence of someone who knew women looked at him. His body was sculpted, his smile dangerous, and when he spotted me on the treadmill one evening, it felt like he could see straight through the mask of perfection I wore. At first, it was innocent. He adjusted my form during workouts, flashed me compliments that made my cheeks burn, and brushed against me just long enough for my body to remember what butterflies felt like. I told myself it was harmless, that it was only attention. But attention has a way of becoming addiction. Soon, I found myself lingering after workouts, laughing at his jokes, waiting for his texts. The night it happened, I told Mark I was staying late at the gym. Instead, I slipped into Ryan's car after everyone had left. The air was thick with silence at first, as if we both knew we were about to cross a line that could never be erased. His hand found mine, rough and warm, and when he kissed me, it was not gentle. It was greedy. My body betrayed me with every response, every sigh, every desperate pull to feel more of him. I felt alive in a way I had not felt in years. The heat of his touch made me forget the vows I made, the man waiting at home, the life I had built. All I could think of was how my skin burned under his hands. And when it was over, when I sat there trembling in his car seat, guilt crashed over me like a wave. But here is the truth that makes my story dark. That guilt did not stop me. It made me crave the high even more. I went home to Mark that night, kissed him on the cheek, and pretended nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I had changed. When he asked me about my workout, I lied smoothly, surprising myself with how easily the lies rolled off my tongue. That scared me. And yet, it thrilled me. Ryan and I became more reckless. Quick meetings in parking lots. Hidden kisses in the gym storage room. Whispered phone calls in the middle of the night. Each time I told myself it would be the last. Each time I swore I would stop. But every promise to myself dissolved the moment I felt his hands on me again. I was hooked, not on him, but on the rush. The secrecy. The danger. The fire. There were moments when I would look at Mark, sitting on the couch with his spreadsheets, his kind eyes filled with trust, and I would feel the crushing weight of betrayal. I knew if he ever found out, it would destroy him. But instead of pulling me back, that fear only pulled me deeper. Because fear, like passion, can be intoxicating. I began to realize I was not just having an affair. I was addicted to affairs. The worst part was how easily I justified it. I told myself Mark was distant, that he buried himself in work and left me starving for affection. I told myself I deserved passion, that I was still young and beautiful and wanted to be seen. But beneath all of those excuses was the truth: I was selfish. I wanted everything: his stability and someone else's fire. The lies piled up quickly. I created fake errands, fake girls' nights, fake excuses about why I could not answer the phone. My entire life became a balancing act, and the thrill of not getting caught became just as addictive as the passion itself. I knew I was dancing with destruction. But what I did not know then was how far I would let myself fall before I hit rock bottom. Because Ryan was only the beginning. After Ryan, should have stopped. I should have looked at myself in the mirror, faced the guilt, and walked away before I destroyed everything. But instead, I went searching for more. That is the part of this story that even I struggle to admit. It was not just about Ryan. It was about the chase, the danger, the way my body trembled every time I stepped into forbidden territory. I was hooked on affairs. Ryan became routine after a while. We had our patterns, our secret meeting places, our whispered goodbyes. And as much as I wanted to convince myself that he was all I needed to satisfy the hunger inside me, I began craving a new high. That is when I met Daniel. Daniel worked at the marketing firm where I had recently picked up a part-time job. I told Mark that I wanted to help contribute to the household and save for vacations, but the truth was uglier. I wanted an excuse to be away from home more often. An excuse to slip deeper into the life I was building behind closed doors. Daniel was different from Ryan in every way. Where Ryan was bold and physical, Daniel was subtle, smooth, and calculated. He was in his early 40s, tall with dark hair sprinkled with gray, and carried himself with an air of confidence that drew people in. He was married too, but the way his eyes lingered on me during meetings told me we both knew where this was headed. It started with lunch breaks. He would slide into the booth across from me at a small cafe near the office, his voice low as he asked about my life. His questions were dangerous because they were not about my body, but about my thoughts, my dreams, my disappointments. He listened in a way that made me feel seen. And being seen, truly seen, can be just as intoxicating as being touched. The first time he brushed his hand against mine across the table, I felt my entire body ignite. It was such a small gesture, but it carried the weight of everything we were not supposed to be. I went home that night shaking, guilty yet giddy, unable to stop thinking about him. It was not long before lunches turned into late nights at the office. I told Mark I had projects to finish, deadlines to meet, clients who needed me. In reality, I was locked in Daniel's office, his lips pressed against mine, his hands sliding across my skin with a hunger that was calmer, slower, but far more dangerous than Ryan's. With Daniel, it was not just physical. It was emotional. And that terrified me even more. Managing one affair was already like juggling fire. Now, I had two. I felt like a tightrope walker balancing above a pit, the rope swaying with every lie I told, every secret I kept. And the higher I climbed, the greater the fall would be when everything came crashing down. But in those moments, I did not care. The thrill was all I could think about. There were nights when I would be with Ryan in his car, the windows fogging as we clawed at each other like wild animals, and then just hours later, I would be in Daniel's office, wrapped in the slow burn of his touch. Each man gave me something different, something my husband never could, and the mix of it all consumed me. The danger escalated quickly. I began deleting texts frantically, hiding burner apps, making up excuses so fast that I sometimes forgot what lie I had told to whom. My phone became both my greatest weapon and my biggest fear. Every time it buzzed, my stomach twisted, terrified that it would be Ryan while I was with Daniel, or Daniel while I was at home with Mark. I knew it was only a matter of time before something slipped. And then it did. One night, after staying late at the office with Daniel, I walked into my house past midnight. Mark was waiting for me in the living room, the glow of the lamp highlighting the worry etched across his face. He asked me where I had been, his voice calm but heavy. My heart pounded so hard that I thought it would burst through my chest. I lied. I told him I was swamped at work, that a client presentation had gone late, that I had even grabbed a coffee on the way home to stay awake. He stared at me for what felt like forever, and in that silence, I wondered if he knew. If he could smell Daniel's cologne on my skin. Finally, he nodded, forcing a tired smile, and told me he trusted me. That word, trust, cut through me like a knife. And yet, instead of stopping me, it made me run deeper into the shadows. Because once a person gets used to hiding in the dark, the light feels unbearable. Ryan began to notice the change. He could sense I was not fully his anymore. One evening, after one of our reckless encounters, he asked me if I was seeing someone else. I laughed it off, kissed him harder, and whispered lies into his ear. But inside, I knew he was right. The truth was, I was spreading myself thin, giving pieces of myself to men who did not deserve them, while ripping apart the one man who truly loved me without even realizing it. Mark started growing suspicious. He checked my phone more often, asked more questions, lingered longer when I said I was going out. And each time, I became sharper, more defensive, more skilled at weaving my web of lies. I told myself that if he had been more attentive, if he had made me feel alive, I would not need any of this. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was not seeking love. I was chasing a drug. And the worst part of any addiction is that it always demands more. The pressure was building. My double life was becoming impossible to contain. I could feel the walls closing in, and yet, I kept running back to both of them. With Ryan, it was heat. With Daniel, it was connection. With Mark, it was stability. I wanted it all, but the truth is, you cannot live 3 lives without one of them exploding. And it was about to explode in the most devastating way. The day my double life came crashing down was not dramatic in the way I had imagined it would be. There was no car chase, no sudden confrontation in the middle of a restaurant, no screaming match in front of neighbors. Instead, it began with something as simple as a phone left on the kitchen counter. It was a Saturday morning. Mark had gone out early to run errands, and I had been careless the night before. My phone, which normally never left my side, had been charging by the coffee maker. When Mark returned, he must have heard it buzz. He must have seen the preview of Daniel's message that lit up the screen. By the time I walked into the kitchen, he was sitting at the table, my phone in his hand, his face pale and unreadable. He did not yell. He did not throw anything. He simply looked at me with eyes that seemed hollow, like something had drained the life out of him. He asked me one question, his voice quiet but sharp enough to cut through the air. "Who is Daniel?" My stomach dropped so violently that I thought I would be sick. Every excuse, every lie I had rehearsed in the past dissolved instantly. My mouth opened, but no words came out. He already knew. He stood up, set the phone on the table, and walked past me without another word. That silence was more terrifying than any shouting could have been. The hours that followed felt like a nightmare unraveling in slow motion. Mark shut himself in our bedroom, and I sat on the couch, trembling, my heart pounding with dread. When he finally emerged, he was holding a folder. Inside were printouts of my text messages, call logs, and emails. He had known for longer than I realized. He had been collecting proof, waiting for the right moment to confront me. The betrayal on his face was unbearable. His voice cracked as he told me how many nights he had stayed awake wondering where I was, how many times he had blamed himself for my distance, how many moments he had convinced himself that I was simply stressed or tired. And all the while, I had been in another man's arms. I tried to explain, to tell him it was not about him, to confess that I was lost, addicted, chasing something I could not even define. But the words sounded pathetic, selfish, hollow. Because no explanation could undo the images burned into his mind of me with someone else. When I admitted that it was not just Daniel, but Ryan too, something inside him broke. His shoulders slumped, his face twisted in pain, and he covered his mouth like he might be sick. That was the moment I knew I had destroyed him completely. The confrontation that followed was raw and merciless. Mark demanded details, and I gave them, not because I wanted to, but because he deserved the truth after all the lies. With every word, his anger grew. He asked me how many times, where, when. I answered, each confession like driving another nail into the coffin of our marriage. He asked me why. That was the only question I could not answer. Because the truth was not simple. It was not just about feeling neglected, or craving passion, or wanting to feel alive. It was about selfishness. It was about the thrill of breaking the rules, about feeding an emptiness inside me that could never truly be filled. And how do you explain that to the man you promised forever to? By the time the sun set, the air in our home felt poisoned. Mark's kindness, his trust, his love, everything that had once defined him, was gone. In its place was rage, heartbreak, and a coldness that made me shiver. Finally, he told me to leave. His voice was steady, but his hands shook as he pointed toward the door. He said he could never look at me again without seeing betrayal. He said the woman he had married no longer existed. And in that moment, I realized he was right. Packing my things felt surreal. Every drawer I opened, every shirt I folded, every picture I touched carried the weight of memories I had destroyed. The life we had built together, the home that once felt safe, now felt like a crime scene. As I zipped up my suitcase, I glanced at our wedding photo on the nightstand. My younger self stared back at me, smiling, full of hope, full of promises she had no idea she would break. I wanted to scream at her, warn her, stop her. But it was too late. When I carried my bags to the front door, Mark did not help. He did not say goodbye. He stood in the hallway, his arms crossed, his eyes filled with a hatred I had never seen before. It was a hatred born from love that had been twisted and burned by betrayal. As I stepped outside, the air felt heavy. The world looked the same, but everything had changed. I was no longer a wife. I was no longer the woman who had stability, security, and a man who adored her. I was just a cheater with a suitcase, walking away from the wreckage I had caused. The weeks that followed were brutal. Ryan called, but I ignored him. Daniel texted, but his words no longer had the same power. Without the secrecy, without the double life, the passion evaporated. They were not lovers anymore. They were reminders of everything I had lost. I moved into a small apartment, empty and quiet. The silence gnawed at me. Every night, I lay awake replaying Mark's face in my mind, hearing his voice breaking as he asked me why, seeing the moment his heart shattered. And I realized something I had refused to admit all along. Affairs are not about love. They are not even about passion. They are about destruction. I had destroyed my marriage, my husband's trust, my own dignity, and for what? A few fleeting highs that vanished as soon as they came. I had traded forever for moments. I had burned down the only safe place I ever had, and there would be no forgiveness, no second chance, no way back. This is the part of my story that hurts the most to tell, because it is not wrapped in redemption. It does not end with reconciliation or forgiveness. It ends with separation, regret, and a lesson carved so deeply into me that I will never forget it. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: passion can blind you, secrecy can thrill you, but betrayal will destroy you. And once you cross that line, you cannot go back. I was married, but I was hooked on affairs. And in the end, those affairs cost me everything.